extremely large as well. Now, really what we'd be looking for in the liver in an autopsy is we'd be looking at, okay, what do the lobes look like? What kind of condition is it in? We'd be looking for signs of cirrhosis of the liver, if there was alcoholism, if there was heavy drug use, might see some signs of the liver as well. Like we said before, we'd end up taking some sections of it. We do a cross-section. Let's go and do a cross-section real quick. And you can see the tissue. And the blue you're seeing here is not because the pig has some odd disease. That is actually the dyed blood vessel area. Okay, so this places, all those dyed areas were in places where it had been active, pretty heavy blood flow throughout. And so that is the liver. So what do we move on to next? Well, we are moving into, well, I cut it out already. You can see the spinal column back here, and I cut the stomach out already a little bit too much. All right, so what you're seeing here, guys, my professionalism notwithstanding, which is lacking, is I have accidentally cut into the stomach. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, why do we care what's in the stomach? Well, stomach comes down, and the stomach gives us evidence of what somebody's been eating or what they haven't been eating. So we'd actually be able to take that liquid and we'd be able to test it and see what it is. All right, go ahead and pan up real quick. All right, so let's give a case study example. All right, so there's numerous cases. We've had people that have been killed, murdered, they've died under unexpected circumstances, and they've been able to determine where they were, their most recent place where they were, based on the contents of their stomach. There's a particular case out in New York. They found this lady, she was dead, and they opened up her stomach, and she had a very specific type of French fry. And that put us into a very specific time period, one that you could even tell what the French fry still was. Also, I believe the arresting officer or the investigating officer was like, oh yeah, that French fry, specific type of cut of fry, like a crinkle cut, was only served by one restaurant in the area, and they were able to go and get correlating evidence. And so a lot of times we always want to check what the contents of the stomach is. Okay, it could be a strong indication of, you know, this person was killed within 6 hours of this meal or less. Okay, it really takes about 24 hours, give or take, for a bite of food to go all the way through the process of the body. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. What we have here is we have the small intestine and the large intestine, and we're just going to cut that out as well. And we definitely have to pull a sample off this. We would weigh this. This is actually one of the more challenging ones. So here's our, here is poop. That's right, that's poop. That'd be coming out of the small intestine. I'm sorry, out of the, one of the intestines. Sorry, that's my daughter laughing in the background. So we're going to move on from there. We'd weigh that. And let's get the last major organ here. Okay, these are the kidneys. Okay, so we got two of them. They're not super huge. They look basically like a bean shape. They look like a kidney bean. That is literally their definition, is they look like a kidney bean. Okay, now kidneys are for processing waste in the body. If you open one up, you can definitely see there's some waste associated with it that is mostly for cleaning the blood. If someone's kidneys die, say someone with high blood pressure or diabetes, they would have to go on dialysis if they wanted to stay alive for any prolonged period of time. This is basically strips the blood of any of the leftover junk from the cells processing food. Okay, so one of the things, I just had to give my kids some candy, so they were over there, so I could talk about this last couple things. One, you always want to make sure if you got a male or a female. In this case, we do have testicles, and we do have the scrotum sac right here. And this guy is definitely a guy. But if it was a female, and they were pregnant, we'd have to, one, if the embryo or baby was dead, we'd definitely have to check to see the age of the embryo. We'd also have to check for signs of rape or sexual assault or sexual abuse, prolonged or sudden. And that's just one of the little things that you have to do with an autopsy, because someone comes in, they may be dead. Just because they're dead doesn't mean that we don't need to know all the pieces of the puzzle that came in before they were deceased. And so we always need to make sure we're aware of that. So our last thing here is we're about to move into the brain. Okay, so let's go ahead and get cutting with the scalp here. So we're going to be cutting into the brain because we do have to measure the brain. We do have to see what's going on. And so we're going to be cutting here. And this is going to take a second. I'm actually going to switch to the scalpel for this, because it does a better job. And I will tell you, if you've never skinned an animal before, skin does not just fly off an animal, okay? That's not how skin works. Skin is sticky. Skin is a mess. Skin wants to stay stuck, okay? And we're getting here. Let me switch to this. Hold on. All right, so I've got my forceps here, to kind of hold this, and we're going to pull that head back, or pull that scalp back, and try and pull this off. Okay, I'm going to keep going on this. Okay. So in my defense, I've really only ever skinned a pig a handful of times, and I generally don't ever deal with the head. Usually I just stick the entire head, I rough it out and pass it on to somebody else, and we just boil the skull, which is not something I can do with this guy. All right, so my hands are covered in pig right now, but let's go and talk about this. When you want to cut into the brain, if you don't have a saw, which I don't have a saw, I don't really have, and not really using that, we're going to go with the old school method. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this before when we see skilled assassinations. Okay, you're going to basically follow the back of the skull, and you're going to find the little soft spot here at the back of the skull. Okay, that is generally a traditional assassination point. What we're going to do is we're going to cut in there, and let's move over here to the pig. We've already kind of cut into that somewhat. And this is our spinal column right there. So there's your spinal cord right there. And that's the spinal cord. And inside here is the brain. And we're about to cut into the brain. Now I'm going to jump ahead in just a second. All right. So we're cutting through the skull here. Now, yes, I did take the head completely off. If this was a person, no, you do not cut their head off. There is not a mortician in the world that can fix that kind of action. Okay, but for the pig, we're cutting it off. Now, for the human brain, there we go. Oh, that's gorgeous. Check that out. Oh, that's the best one I've done in a while. Okay, you can get the skull cap right here. Okay, and there's your brain. Now, the brain is a bit jello-ish in texture when it's coming from a living tissue. This has already been stabilized, but what you would do, all right, so we're going to go ahead and remove the brain now. The brain is a bit of a mess. This is not going to be as smooth as I'd like. Yep, there's the brain. Okay, now, the brain, hopefully your brain came out less messy than mine. We'd obviously weigh the brain. If the brain weighed more than about, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think 5 or 6 pounds. No, 4 or 5 pounds, because the entire head itself should only weigh about 8 pounds in a human. Obviously, youth should vary with weight, and you'd have to look at one of the American Medical Association sliding scales for that. Different cultures, different regions, slightly different weight variances in there. Now, we're looking for what a healthy brain looks like. Obviously, this is a pretty healthy looking brain. It's a pretty well developed brain. Everything looks right. It's very jello-y in texture. And I don't see any disease. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for things that would cause mental illness, late-stage syphilis, and a few other diseases. If it was mercury poisoning or if it was late-stage or third-stage syphilis, you'd see holes in the brain. The brain would actually look like Swiss cheese. If you're not sure what Swiss cheese is the cheese with holes in it, you usually see in cartoons with mice in it. So, that is the brain. All right, so we'd cut the brain. We'd look inside to see what it looks like on the inside. And then we take a cell sample, we'd put it in a microscope, and we take a look at the internal cells. And that would be about it for the brain. Okay, so let's finish this up. So we got all of our stuff here. Obviously, this is a bit of a mess. So what do we do? Well, if this is a human, we would take all the internal organs, and if it was a crime scene, we'd bag them up, and we'd save them in a fridge or storage unit if we need to do some additional research on it to solve the crime. We would take in blood samples, we've done a toxicology screen, we would have taken a DNA sample at this point. So what do we do? Well, you would actually stitch everything back up. Now, I have never had any success with stitching these things back up. Okay, all the internal organs would stay out, and we'd try to make the pig look as peaceful as possible, and then put him in a suit from Suit City. And that would pretty much be it. You'd file your report. Now, if you notice, there's one thing I haven't done during this entire thing, and that is I have not written a single thing down. Usually all these are recorded, okay? And then you'd come back and you'd make additional notes afterwards, or you'd have an assistant helping out with this, and they'd be making the notes as you're dictating to them. Now, remember, this is the job of a medical examiner. Okay, a medical examiner literally looks at the body, they must be a doctor, and they determine the cause, manner, and mechanism of death. Okay? So please remember that when you're looking at this. So, coroner, medical examiner may be the same person, but a lot of times the coroner may be an elected position. Okay? Now, someone asked me at one point, what about a mortician? A mortician is a very different job in a lot of cases. A mortician is, they're preparing the body for burial. It's a natural cause, or they've already been signed off by a doctor. We know what the cause is, and they're simply preparing the body for burial, for an open casket, and they're dressing the body, and they're also acting as a counselor. And so they're very different stages in each one of these. One is really the governmental end with the coroner. The other is the paperwork and the bureaucracy side. The medical examiner is the actual doctor who also may be dealing with the paperwork and the bureaucracy. And then you have the mortician who is literally dealing with the family. Now, a lot of these jobs can overlap, but there's a lot of variety. So, I think I've got everything. This is the first time I've done this video. This is probably the first time I've done a fetal pig in probably at least 10 years. But if you have any questions, there's going to be a spot at the end of this assignment for you to do questions. And now I just heard one of my children scream, so I got to go be a dad again. So, special thanks to my wife who is holding the camera. Say hi.
Hi.
And special thanks to my daughter Evelyn, who has been here being moral support and also wanting to touch everything. All right, this is Mr. Menifee, and I'll see you later.